going to go on to methodology and how to get the thinking right and the ideas right before we start writing in methodology. Okay, now I call these my research flowers. Unfortunately, I didn't put the reference on it, but these I devised myself, so it's Picard 2015, all right? If you want to cite. Now, what I think is the methodology, it's like a flower, because every aspect touches the other aspect. They all fit together. They touch the other aspect. Good, we should have enough for everyone. There you go. Right. So if we'll look at the people one together. The science technology one is very similar, but it just has some fewer elements. Okay, so if we start and we want to think about your project. Now I want each one of you to think about the research project you are working on now. So it could be your own, or it could be one of your students if you're not working on one yourself at the moment. And think, what would you answer for each of these things? So we start in the middle of the flower, and then all of the aspects touch on it. So the middle of the flower starts with the real world problem. What real world problem are you addressing? Yes?
Okay, I'm looking at water scarcity and how to address it.
Scarcity.
Yeah.
Scarcity of what particular elements?
The impact human has on water due to the...
water scarcity. All right. Okay. So you would start in your literature review saying, why is water scarcity such a problem? You'd give us the scope of the problem, etc., etc. Then you'd probably, we all do, move into the particular context of maybe South Africa, maybe somewhere else in Africa that you're looking at, particularly at water scarcity. And from there, you would move into what do other people know about water scarcity in the middle. And that's the gangs or the categories that we've been talking about. And finally, from there, you would work into the innovation. So what do you think is new? I always say, everybody writes about water scarcity. What's so special about your project? Convince me, why is your project special?
Oh, okay. Okay, it's not my project, it's my student's project.
Yes, why is your student special? Because you only work with special students, you don't work with rubbish students. Why is your student special?
I think the project is special because we're trying to look at, it's not that water is scarce, okay? Because water is not reducing, the quantity of water is not reducing, but it's the quality of water that is reduced.
Okay. Now other people do look at that, at quality, water quality. Still, what makes your project or your students' project special? Because remember, you guys are going to be making that argument in international journals. You are special. So why are you special?
Okay, I think in the project we're trying to see that it's not just enough for us to measure the quality of the water, okay, that is reducing, but we need to find out what are the factors, okay, that it's accelerating the reduction in the quality of the water, and how can we reduce it or manage those factors to avoid.
Okay, so who are we when you're talking about we?
I'm talking about me and my students.
No, but your specific context, okay? So again, people often work on factors influencing water quality and reducing it. What's your particular slant or angle?
Okay,
I'm picking up you now. But I'm doing what you've got to do to your students. Push and push and push to draw out the precision. Yeah?
I think that this is where we're using the MIS methodology kind of thing. You know, we take chemical analysis of the water to find out the quality of the water. Then we also look at who are the users of this water. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
And how do they impact on that chemical?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're starting to see innovation coming in here. Because your gangs, you've got a lot of chemists in your gangs. People who are working on that side. You've got a lot of social scientists in your gang. People who are working on poverty and how poverty affects water quality and blah, blah, blah. But what you're doing is you're bringing together this multidisciplinary study, which is your innovation.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the argument you need to make. And the gangs your student needs to go and look at. So your student is looking at a lot of different fields. So she or he? She will need to go and find 5 top journals as a beginning in at least 2 different fields. Maybe 3 or 4 different fields to find those keywords that relate to water quality. Fantastic, good. So that's where we get to the gap or innovation, right? But now this gap and innovation, sorry, it's a bit dark, but if you look at the other one, you can see that central part touches on view of causation. Causation means what is a cause and what is an effect. Okay, so what kind of view of causation is your student trying to look at? Is your student trying to look at direct causes and effects? Or are you trying to look at multiple things impacting? What kind of causation view does your student have?
I think we're trying to look at, he's trying to look at the direct cause and
Yes.
the effect of, yeah.
But she's also maybe looking at a chain of causes
Yeah.
and effects.
Yeah.
So these are all the kind of things that you need to get your student to articulate and think of. Now, if you see that issue of causation links with reliability and validity. Okay, I'll give you the story. It's very, very famous, the story of the inductivist chicken or the inductivist turkey. Once upon a time, there was a chicken. The original author spoke about the turkey, but I always talk about a chicken. There was a chicken living on a farm, and the chicken was trying to have a scientific view of when do we get fed on this farm. So for a long time he observed in different conditions, cold, hot, summer, winter, if the farmer is feeding me, if the wife is feeding me, if the worker is feeding me, when am I being fed? And over many months he finally comes to the realization, I get fed at 6 o'clock in the morning. And that is his scientific conclusion. Very, very scientific, okay? I see all of these things and I come to this conclusion. But then the next day it was Christmas or Eid or some special holiday and he was not fed at all, he was eaten. So he was looking at the wrong type of causation. He was thinking cause and effect. I can see all of this and therefore I am fed at this time. But he didn't understand the mechanism underlying the causation, which is that I am in a system where animals are food. And I'm only being fed so that I can be eaten. All right. Okay, so that study was unreliable. It was not a valid study. It was not a reliable study. So when you're talking to your students about the study and their methodology, they have to make an argument how that topic that they are looking at is linked with a view of causation and is therefore a valid study or a reliable study. Let's pick on somebody else. What is your study or your student study?
One of the students is comparing a few years ago they made the addition of folic acid compulsory in bread and meal to see if the neural tube defect, to decrease the occurrence of neural tube defects in babies.
Yes.
So she wants to, from the data that she can get now, see if that has really happened.
Okay. Aha, so this is a very clear view of causation as direct cause and effect. However, in order to make her study valid and her study reliable, she's got to see, are there any other factors that might get in the way? Is it maybe something else? How can you control for other things that might be affecting it? It might be some other protein in the meal that is doing that, and not necessarily the folic acid. So even in a really pure science, your view of causation links with your reliability and validity of your study. And the student's got to be able to articulate that kind of thing and write it in their methodology. Okay, so then that links, if we move to the side, what is your way of thinking of what counts as knowledge? What is knowledge? Okay, in the science one, we have to that side, yes, again, what is your way of thinking of what counts as knowledge as well? Because for scientists in your field, it's what you observe, what you measure, etc. But you still need ways to check that it's still reliable. For physicists, for example, theoretical physicists, they're not directly observing or seeing anything. For them, what counts as knowledge is all these theories that they develop. Okay, so you've got to think of what is my way of knowledge. Okay, what is my way of thinking about knowledge? And the humanities and social sciences and people like that, when you're developing a questionnaire, for example, who's doing questionnaires? Yeah? Okay? With those kind of questionnaires, you've got to make sure that that questionnaire is actually getting what you see as knowledge, what you can actually count as knowledge. Which links again with your paradigm, if you're more in the humanities and social sciences. And your paradigm is, are you positivist, where you're trying to follow a scientific way, even when you're working with people? Or are you more critical or whatever? So these are different ways of thinking. Not all of you will be in that area. But in, for example, fields like education, you have to think of it. And this all influences your style of research. So what style of research are you having, or what type of research are you having in this? Because you're more science. So if we look here, your way of thinking of what counts as knowledge links with your disciplinary field. I'll give you one of those as well. So what would you say is your discipline?
Well, it's medical.
Medical, but what kind of medicine are you doing? We can see, is it experimental? Is it analytical? Is it applied? Is it theoretical?
No, it's experimental.
Yeah, okay. So that links with everything. The students have got to show experiments, show controls, show all of those kind of things. Okay, and then that links with ethics, because everything is linked with ethics. So what kind of ethical issues might come up in relation to your study?
Well, they work with subjects' data.
Yes.
Informed consent of the
Yes.
of the children.
Yes.
So they only have to use data that's relevant to the study and not everything that they can find, because they can get the whole hospital file, but not to section.
And through the flower, that also links with validity and reliability. So you can see that all these elements are playing together. And in each case, because students often say, oh, I don't know what to write about methodology. But if you take them through this process, or if you take yourself through this process, how does each element, what is each element of my methodology, and how does it fit together? And how does one element influence the other elements in terms of the design? And all of that links with your research design, your overarching methodology, your sampling, your participants. So for example, in your study, how many participants do you have?
Well, I'm not sure how many she will have. She's sampling from the center at University Hospital to see how many neuroacute defects were reported in.
Okay, so that's linked again with the ethics. If she's trying to have some kind of beneficence, trying to solve problems in a real context. Yeah, So that all fits together. Good. Okay. And then it links to the research design, etc. The data collection methods and the data analysis methods, they all fit together. So go home and take this and see what you can do about your own project. How can you answer each one of these elements? And then how does each, see how does my design fit with my type of research? Or how does my discipline fit with my sampling? And, go across the flower this way and that way to try and see all the elements of that flower and how they fit together. Okay, slideshow. So, what I'm seeing is that you're constantly so much conceptual work, so much thinking through to get the content right before you start to write, even in something like the literature review or the methodology that we don't tend to help our students with. We say, get on with that. I'm going to help you with the real work of the study. But this is very, very important. And the thing is this is a constant process, both with the methodology and with the literature review. You have to come back again and iterate again and again and again.